church sermons, discipleship is not just a spectator sport.
Yeah.
It is participate. There's no bench warmers when it comes to the body of Christ. We all have a starting position, and online church, despite its best intentions, can kind of push people the opposite direction if we're not intentional.
Welcome to the Enduring Church Podcast, hosted by Nathan Castleberry and Michael Davis, helping pastors grow their churches while equipping the body to love their neighbors. Yeah, their literal neighbors.
Nathan, we are back. How's it going, bud?
What's up, Michael? I am excited to share with our listeners. You'll have to kind of hear the description, but for those of you who are watching on YouTube, I'm drinking just about the perfect shot of espresso. And this is a big moment for me because for the longest time, I had to endure an old portafilter on my espresso machine. Got a new one, and it's a pleasure now. I enjoy it. I don't just endure it anymore.
That's
Get it?
Keurig, right?
Did you get it?
I got it. Did you endure my joke? It's a Keurig,
Wait.
right? You got that from
come
Keurig?
on. Come on. That's a dig. That's a dig, especially in light of our pre-roll conversation about coffee.
100%. Everyone knows I like my coffee dark and sweet. So
I just luckily, for our friendship's sake, I already have a session scheduled with my counselor this afternoon, but just added something to the agenda.
Thank you, everyone. This is another episode of the Enduring Church Podcast. I am Michael Davis.
And I am Nathan Castleberry.
And he is a coffee snob. So listen,
and
today...
former online campus pastor.
Oh, it was funny for you guys. We did have the pre-roll conversation where I was like, are you ready to go scorched earth? I'm ready to go scorched earth. So today we're going to be tackling the idea of online church.
Thank you for checking out the Enduring Church Podcast on YouTube. If you could do us a favor, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to make sure that you're aware whenever a new episode drops. Also, if you got some time, give us a thumbs up and also leave a comment. Really helps us with the algorithm. Well, now back to the show.
Now, listen, let's be honest. This was a bigger problem a few years ago during the whole COVID stuff, right? This was kind of an overcorrection. So maybe we're going to be talking about stuff that's not necessarily as relevant, but listen, it's still relevant, especially when it's not necessarily virtual church, but it's people using online sermons in lieu of church. But let's get to
are already stirring.
Let's just going. Listen, my pastor is Tim Keller. I've listened to his sermons every single day almost. So can an online church truly fulfill the biblical call to gather in community, or is it just a convenient alternative to in-person worship?
Yes. So I think there are ways that you can legitimately say yes to both. But I do think that anybody who spent any amount of time really at the helm of like running an online church, air quotes, can easily spot out some of the deficiencies. So I'm not one of the, like, and just so you know, I don't have, like, we don't stream our services online. So, and I can explain why we're not doing that later. But I have seen ways that it works. And again, that is not me saying that this is a good alternative to the local church getting together in person. I want to come back to that in a little bit. There are ways that it works. And, but in my experience, the vast majority of users
I love that.
are viewing it as a convenient alternative. If I'm just being gut level honest, and I can share why in my personal experience, but to me, there's a little bit of yes to both of those options.
I think this is like the ultimate consumerism, right? We used to go to the store to pick up, our bread and milk and do our grocery shopping. Now we order it online and it's delivered to our door. I think that this is the end result of, and again, I do think that COVID started off a lot of this. Now, I am not going to be against streaming, and for one very good reason, especially at our church. we actually have a substantial number of people who are basically stuck at home. But that doesn't mean that we don't visit them, right? We have our list of widows that we go and visit, and we make sure that there's no one left behind. But yeah, in lieu of it, and here's the thing that's really funny, Pastor, if a person has to choose between you and R.C. Sproul or Tim Keller or John Piper or name anyone else who's incredibly a talented preacher,
we know your lane. You just kind of like put all your cards on the table.
Hold on, I could think of others. Yeah, okay, so maybe not. Maybe I do. But there are better preachers than you. Like if you're not a celebrity pastor, you're just a normal person who's just trying to, shepherd his flock. If this is a viable alternative to in-person attendance, then they're going to find a better preacher than you. I'm sorry.
Right. You're making me think about the dozens of views that I get on my sermons on YouTube. So what you just brought up with having an elderly or sick, part of your congregation, that in of itself is a great validation for the need to have some sort of online church experience. And that's one of the things that I want to actually do with our church, local church Canton. There's two reasons why I'm not streaming online right now. The primary reason is because I do think it makes it easy for people to not show up. I gotta be honest.
It's like, we'll just watch it.
But the very close second, so it's more like, I wouldn't even call it second. It's like 1.5 is, I don't have the technology to do it to do it well. Like the way we capture, it just isn't great right now. So that's, I've got other things I want to spend our limited resources on. And when I feel like we're at a place fiscally where we can really get the right gear and do it well, we probably will have an online presence, but I won't be doing it live on Sunday. It'll be released at some random time throughout the week because I want you here. I want you in person. If that's at all possible.
Yeah, listen, and I'm not going to call my wife out. I'm just going to call myself out. There have been times where there's something going on, or there's, let's say, a sick kid, or not that we do not. Hey, listen, do not send your kids to church if they're sick, please.
Yeah, but also be real about what sick is. I'm just saying, as a pastor who deals with a bunch of volunteers, it's like, oh, you're fine. You wouldn't skip work with a sniffle.
No,
what you're doing with your kids ministry small group is pretty important. So come on.
Yeah, but if your kid's throwing up, please don't come.
Don't come. Please. Don't bring that.
No,
don't bring that.
Don't bring. But where it legitimately, we were like, oh, this is gonna be hard. We could just watch. Let's just watch church online, and legitimately, that has been a thing that made us feel better. And I want you to guess how closely we were listening, how many notes we took, and how much we got out of that online sermon.
I'm
nothing.
Okay, I was about to feel really guilty for being really cynical, because what I wanted to draw attention to was your word choice. You said we watched online.
Yeah. Yep.
Man, that's I just feel like that's what it is. I don't and I've had the title online campus pastor.
You need to tell us more about that. That's awesome.
We'll unpack it. But even when I had that pastor, I felt like I was more of an internet show producer than a pastor. Not that Amazing Ministry didn't. I've got some beautiful stories of online ministry. But again, even during COVID, even during the lockdown, when I was part of the team that was responsible for, capturing, and I was teaching and all the things, I helped edit the videos. We helped other churches launch their online presence. I still felt in 2020 when I was at home, I just still felt like I was watching, not worshiping. And maybe that's an indictment on my own, on my own just investment into it. But it feels like it. I would say this. It is there. I have a hard time calling it online church, I've got no problem calling it online ministry,
Yeah.
but not online church.
Now, I will say, because we're going to waffle back and forth, as from a marketing perspective, people sometimes want to see what the preaching's like. So that's kind of
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
But I think the main problem, especially if you've got kids and you're sitting there in your living room and you're attempting to watch, again, I was going to say watch church. There's going to be people are going to want snacks. Kids are going to want snacks. Dad's going to want snacks. You're going to be kind of walking in and out just because that's just the nature of just having kids. But I will say, going back into it, and I really want to hear about you being a virtual worship pastor. Nothing in Scripture says that that when the church gathers, it's about like predominantly about learning. It's about fellowship
Right.
with the body. It's about
Right.
like I'm that's where I'm confused in
Right.
regards to why. Yeah, go ahead.
You're nailing it. I mean, it's so we motivate one another to do good things. I mean, that's Hebrews 10.
Right.
I mean, that's the relational aspect of it is one of the key focal points of the gathering.
So, and again, I mean, I don't even particularly like social media. I have to use it for work, but like, I don't want to, and I think, and tell me if you think that's wrong. I do see a shift. There were a lot of people. It's funny. I was actually even talking to some folks about like this virtual, like tabletop gaming startup idea that we were working. We had the developers and everything. And right around 6 months after COVID started, we had a meeting where like, do you want to do this? Because I don't want to play games online. And they were like, I don't want to play games online anymore either. And like, we are sociable creatures, right?
Right.
We need fellowship, even with imperfect people who are going to say weird and random things to you. And, the weird extrovert that just wants to hug everyone. And like those people are those people are the people that we are going to be spending an eternity with. We've said this a bunch of times. If you don't like them and you don't want to spend time with them, you're in for a weird treat when you go to heaven or when Jesus comes back.
So man, I think if Paul were around today and planting his churches and doing all the things, I think when we look at the book of Acts, they leveraged every form of media that the Roman Empire made available. For them, it was writing letters and all the things, right? So use the tools. Use the tools. But for me, like this, it is a tool of ministry. It is not church. It is not an adequate option for the gathering of the believers. And when you think about the elderly or the sick that are homebound, that's a great tool. Also, I don't know where our listeners are in the country, but here in the South, travel baseball is huge, and travel sports now happen a lot. Tournaments on Sundays. So I've heard some great testimony about how people have been able to, gather their team around an iPad and, take in the message and all that sort of stuff. Now, again, it's not like that's occupying a bunch of their head and heart space as they're getting ready to compete. But I love how that brings faith into some of your spheres of influence. It's a great witness. But again, it's not church. It's not church. It's a devotion. Ministry. It's a witnessing tool. It's ministry. It's not church.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've sat around, an iPad with friends and watched sermon clips from, one of my favorite sermons of all time is the sermon that Tim Keller gave right after 9/11. I thought it was absolutely, and I've played it for others and gotten a lot out of it. If you ask me if that's a good, replacement for, hanging out with believers and being under the word in person, doing community groups or doing whatever else like that, it's not church. It's not church.
Right. So we can't overcorrect and bury our heads in the sand, because this is, I think Jesus and Paul, I think they and the apostles would have some sort of online presence if they were physically walking the earth today. And I'm excited to pick your brain a little bit about it in this episode as someone in the marketing, media, communications field. I would love, like, for me, some of the biggest breakthroughs that we've had from a new person perspective and getting new eyeballs on the brand and
Yeah.
has not been from people catching my sermons on YouTube. Sometimes I've had a few very flattering conversations where people are like, man, I heard your sermon online and I loved it. And we use an AI service, church.tech, and it pulls good excerpts from our sermons and helps
Yeah.
us put on social media. But the biggest shift for us wasn't the content that we were uploading online. It was what we did with our Google business profile, and that was a lot due to your coaching. So just to turn it around on you for a moment as a marketer, just speak to, from your perspective, where are you more likely to get people to interact with your ministry these days? Is it through a stream? Is it through sermon excerpts? Is it through all these things? Or is it more in my experience, like the Google business, SEO, that space, a little bit of both? I don't know. What's your thoughts?
Yes. That is the answer. No, here's
Yeah.
the thing. Marketing in general is about getting people to do what you want them to do. And if your goal is to get them to watch your sermon series, then fantastic. You work and you create a campaign and a focus on getting people to go to your sermon series or to watch your sermon series. If your goal is to have people join your church, do missions together with your church, and to support your church, and to be a member of your church, then you're going to do things very differently. I think that it's, if you see the way that you're communicating online with folks as transactional, you're going to drive them to do a transaction. If it is about a journey in order to have a destination, then it's going to be a very different way of doing it. People are going to want to see different things. And, it's funny because a lot of people would assume, because my like 99.5% of everything I do is digital, right? So there's some people that are going to assume that I will be totally for it. But I'm sorry, digital church is an abomination from the pit of hell. Not that the tactic itself isn't, but if your focus is on trying to get people to sit in a house by themselves and to ignore the body and to neglect the fellowship of believers, that's frankly you are failing. And I think that you can use these tools in forms of discipleship, in forms of just getting your presence and your brand out there. But if you neglect the fellowship, what you're doing is that you're neglecting and you're neglecting your flock. And
Well, yeah, man, that's so powerful. And you know what, where that brings my mind is not just about neglecting your flock, but I mean, the priesthood of the believer. Like, we have to teach those viewers that are out there watching online that if you're not using your spiritual gifts in a body, then there, it's not just what you're missing, it's what that body is missing by you not being present there.
absolutely.
And I think that's true with in-person church as well. Like, that's one of the things we talk about a lot. Like, guys, like, I'm a decent preacher, but I do a terrible job trying to be the Holy Spirit. I can't solve all the problems.
Yep.
I can't out preach your spiritual discipline and your spiritual acts of service. So we have to recognize that this is not just church sermons. Discipleship is not just a spectator sport.
Yeah.
It is participate. There's no bench warmers when it comes to the body of Christ. We all have a starting position, and online church, despite its best intentions, can kind of push people the opposite direction if we're not intentional. So to
Absolutely.
learn more, email mdavis at First Day Marketing.
No, I'm even going to take it a step further. I don't even think that it's okay to attend a church that you can't that's maybe more than like 30 or 45 minutes away. Because what you're doing is, in a very real sense, it's like, yeah, you might be participating in Sunday. I'm not saying it's bad. Okay, please. I know I'm going all like puritanical on here, but I don't, which is pretty normal, right? I'm going to pull out my my John Calvin books, and no, it's but legitimately, do you attend a church or do you belong to a church? And
Right.
you hit the nail on the head here. Sunday mornings are really, really important. They're phenomenal. You know, you do communion, you sit under the word, you see all your friends, you have this shared commitment. People are using their spiritual gifts. It's phenomenal. But I've read Acts, it doesn't end on Sunday. And if you live an hour and a half away, you're attending church, but are you belonging to that community of believers? Are you,
Yeah.
are you loving the community that God has put that church in? And I think
Yeah,
that,
man.
yeah, and it goes way out of the way when you're saying, okay, it's 11 o'clock, time to turn on YouTube and let's go watch church.
Yeah, it's not just a broadcast. It's like when we belong to a church, we need it as much as it needs us. And I think that is one of the
100%.
deficiencies of calling it online church. And that was my experience. Now, here's the thing. I've got some as much as I have critique for
Yeah.
that language online church, I have a few really beautiful like success stories. I mean, we had discipleship groups happening with people all over the world. You know, we
Yeah.
had we had chat hosts from people all over the world, and they were very intentional. And let's be honest, even before COVID, remote culture was becoming I wouldn't say
Yeah.
mainstream, but less weird. I mean,
Yeah.
certainly in the dating space, that's been very mainstream for many years now. So remote culture has advantages.
Yeah.
But here is my number one critique as somebody who had like we as part of a multi-site church, and one of our sites was online, and the majority of people tuning in online. And we were in South Florida where most of our campuses were. The
Yeah.
majority of people tuning in online were within driving distance with one of our 3 or 4 South Florida campuses. And that was so disheartening for me. I
Yeah.
didn't want to look at the analytics because I'm just like, I mean, it made me look good, it made me as the leader. Oh, look at all these thousands of views that I'm getting. And it helped us report numbers to Outreach Magazine.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, everybody's counting their online numbers there, even though they
Yeah.
didn't want you to. But I just felt like such a fraud so
Yeah.
often because I'm like, man, these people are. It is a play of convenience more than it's a play of spiritual formation, and that was really disheartening. Now, the few times that we did get to drive people to an actual physical location, that was huge. I don't
Yeah.
want to diminish that either. I remember being able to have people that made spiritual decisions to follow Jesus a few times a year would meet me at our broadcast campus, and we would
Yeah.
baptize them in person. Great stuff. But man, like shame on me for not trying to really push them. Like, okay, it's not hard to get here. You've done it. So jump on a team, start serving, join a small group. Like online was just the doorway. It's not, that was the front porch. It's not the living room.
Yeah.
So that was some of my biggest, just constant, that's why I said I felt like I was more of a producer than a pastor. Putting something out online, we're getting some decent engagement. But this was 2012. This was a while back, right? So
Yeah.
this was in some of the early days of online church. And as our culture has gotten more remote, more digitized, I can't help but to imagine that is become even more of a reality, that a lot of your viewers could be there
Yeah.
in person. And like you said, we need to have a pathway in mind, not just hope we got the view, hope we got the analytics, hope we went viral. It's not discipleship.
It's the end. It's the where that journey is going. And it's not about attendance. It's about activating the person to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And I just don't see how you can do that remotely. None of these tactics are inherently bad. So hear me out. Maybe I went a little bit off the rails, and maybe I really did go a little bit too scorched earth. None of these things are bad by themselves. See, I almost messed up that saying, but none of them are bad. But it's about journey, right? It's about discipleship. It's about moving people along. And you can't do this digitally. You can't love a neighbor digitally. This is what our culture does. I mean, legitimately, this is what our culture does. We complain online, we talk about things online, and this has been this replacement for fellowship and for making friends and for living life together. Let's not do this with the church. Again, online discipleship is awesome. Like people could be all over the place. They could be doing games or whatever, like where we meet online and have good discussions. But that's not the end of the journey. And that's what I'm trying to say here. I'm not saying that these are bad things. It's just not the end of the journey. You can't love people virtually. You just can't.
So I think look at it'd be really neat if we maybe reframed how we view online ministry. What if it was a part of your missions team instead of your marketing team? What if that was one of the ways
Amen.
that you tried to fulfill the Great Commission globally? Is, hey, you know what, we are producing quality content and we're getting views all around the world, and we're planting seeds for the gospel. So here's where we really get to stretch our faith and see if we are for the kingdom or if we're for our viral online presence. If you're seeing viewers happen everywhere, and whatnot, sometimes I hear success stories of churches being like, well, hey, why don't you start a house church there? Love that, not opposed to that. That's there's some ways that could be effective. You're rolling the dice a little bit. Do you have somebody that knows what they're doing from a shepherding standpoint, or do you just have somebody who's gifted with hospitality? So there are some ecclesiological risks doing that approach, and not every ministry is well enough funded to be like, okay, if you got enough people going, we will help you hire a pastor. But what you can do, what every church can do, is encourage people. Hey, if there's something that's happened here, if God has gotten a hold of your heart, I see this language a lot. Consider giving.
Yeah. Yeah.
What if you didn't say consider giving to my church online? Hey, consider finding a Bible believing, Jesus loving church in your community. I mean, again, I know you might be missing out on some revenue, but do we trust God or not? Are we building the kingdom? Are we expanding our brand? So, what if I don't want anybody that's listening to feel guilty for
Yeah.
having a successful, air quote, successful online presence. But let's just define what success is. Success is discipleship, not viewership. And while you might be able to get the ball going with online, I question the efficacy of the long-term play being online. So what if we trusted that God has churches everywhere, right? What if we trusted that God really is this sovereign God who's playing chess, and he's moving, he's on the move. Encourage people that are watching. Hey, this is great, but this is not a substitute. We're glad that you're tuning in. We're glad that God has done something, but find a church in your area, and who knows what could come from that. But we have to, if we start to categorize it as building the kingdom as a missions play, then I think maybe it allows us to be a little more open handed with it.
Ministry, and that's it. I mean, you can even use it for discipleship. I've told pastors, like, that take some of the things you have, or even maybe create a video where it's like, hey, you heard this on Sunday, this is how I think you should try to apply it this week. Like, those are all phenomenal stuff, and you can use digital means in which to do this, but it's not the end. And that's all I'm trying to say here. And I think that if this is and I said this at the beginning of the episode, this is the ultimate consumeristic play. You are serving people who want to be served rather than serving people who are going to serve others.
Right. So I always like to get back to the book of Acts, and I'm not one of those guys who's like New Testament church, because a lot of times the people who say that want to get out of tithing. It's like, well, they were much more of a reverse tithe than a tithe. So if you want to play that card,
they had all in common with each other. There wasn't tithing; it was everything.
So my thing is, I like to look back to what I like to say is maybe their philosophies, and copy and paste the philosophies, maybe not copy and paste the practices, because it's 2,000 years ago. So to me, I'm looking at Paul obviously did everything he could to mass produce and circulate letters, and he had a global mentality. The Great Commission is global.
100%.
Paul was at Ephesus for 3 years.
Right.
So there is a local presence that I think got his priority. I mean, when you look in Acts 20, when Paul is departing from Ephesus, they are weeping that he is leaving. They wouldn't be weeping if he spent all of his time writing letters thinking about the global church.
Yeah, and then
They were
visited for a
weeping, but
weekend. Yeah,
right. No, they know that they got his devotion as a shepherd, as an apostle. So it's some of my friends that are involved in international church planting. They say this: think global but act local.
yep,
And I think we, while you may have a global platform, if you are a pastor overseeing a flock, you have a local ministry. You have a local obligation. And I'm not saying that we ignore the low hanging fruit that is an online presence.
yeah.
Let's leverage it for the gospel. We are fishers of men. We should be doing everything we can, just like Paul was doing everything he could to get the word out on a mass scale. But
100%.
uh, locally is where we saw the founders of Christianity, right? The apostles. Thomas invests himself locally in India. You know, there are it's a local movement. John planted himself at Ephesus long term. Paul was there for a few years. Paul planted himself at Philippi. I mean, all these places where Paul was sending epistles, he had a physical presence there where he would work to establish local leadership, train up the Timothys and Tituses, and empower them. So we while we are locally minded, while we are globally minded, we have to be locally focused. At least that's
Yeah.
my humble opinion.
No, I think that's fair. I think that you know, I think it can almost come off sounding like, like, because people said this about radio and they said this about a bunch of different things. This isn't about, closing your eyes and saying that we're rejecting modernity. It's about doing things with an end goal. And our end goal is to grow the kingdom of God. It's to love God with everything we have and to love people, love our neighbors like we love ourselves. And I think that if we have that as the cornerstone in what we do, we're going to use those tools. I mean, my goodness, what we're doing. I mean, we've got people that listen to us from Italy and France. I think we've got a couple of people from Russia, and so this is phenomenal that we have the ability to be able to share the gospel with people who maybe don't even really have a church, but it's not the end of the journey. The end of the journey, we are placed here not to consume content and to learn more, learn theology. And that is not the end result. That is not what discipleship is about. It's about taking what's here, listening, taking what's here, processing it in the heart and having it go out. That is what we're called to do.
So I'll say this: content creation in this day and age is not synonymous with discipleship. Can it be used as a part of discipleship? Yes. But the Great Commission is not about content creation. The Great Commission is about going and making disciples. Go is the verb.
Yep.
Go. And I'm not going anywhere right now. Even though we are speaking to people all over the world, I'm not going there. So I think we have to understand the original mission trip journeys of Paul were not digging wells and building schools. They were not humanitarian effort. It was the planting of churches, because the physical body of Christ is how the gospel gets spread. So again, can online content be an element of discipleship? Sure. Can it be used for discipleship? But discipleship is hand to hand. It's shoulder to shoulder. And we, while we cannot ignore the reality of our digital remote culture, we cannot just mimic culture. We have to redeem culture. So use it where we can use it, but we have to always be pointing people toward the ideal. What I say a lot is we pastor the real, but we preach and we shepherd and we guide toward the ideal. And I think that has to be a similar mentality in how we approach online as well.
Yeah, no, and okay, so we have got to start taking this encouraging, So we got to take it back to the encouraging.
Yeah.
Hear me out. Like, no one has got this figured out. And as soon as we figure this out, there will be some new technology that allows us to do this better. I think that if we have this idea of how do we serve the people that God has put into our churches the best, that should be the singular focus of how we serve, right? And if
Right.
elements of that is to use certain tools and certain tactics, but we want what's best for them. And sitting in on a couch on Sunday as the extent of how they engage in church is not what's best for them. And frankly, it's not what's best for their community. So understand that it's all about what is, we always say in marketing, is like, what is the primary CTA call to action? What's the secondary call to action? What's the tertiary call to action? What do we want people to do? And it's always couched in language of the journey, right? A little bit of sneak peek into how marketers talk, but it's about, taking people who don't know anything, and let's relate this in regards to church world. So the unknown person, the person maybe a non-believer, maybe a person who is maybe a new believer or whatever. How do we take them into this next stage and this next stage and this next stage and then this focus of maybe being a member or being maybe becoming a church planner, anything, but like, what is that journey that you want people to go on? And understand that the elements of those steps, what causes people to go from one step to another, those are just tactics. Those are just a thing to do with the focus of getting people to move further and further down the user journey with the hope that they become like again, if this was marketing, it'd be brand advocate, right? That's what everyone wants. This person loves the brand, tells their friends all about the brand. But if we're talking about church, this is a person who doesn't know Jesus, who finds out who Jesus is and what he's done for them. And I think that can happen online. That happens online all the time.
Right.
But then they join a church, join a group of believers who are able to disciple them to live life together, and then to progressively say, I found my spiritual gift. I know how to use that spiritual gift to serve the church and to serve the kingdom. And then I'm going out and making my own disciples, and I am being the hands and feet of Jesus.
Yeah.
You stop in stage 2 if your church is virtual only. I don't see how you can do it otherwise.
So I love the marketing overlay for this, and I know funnel is a big word for you guys. So it's like,
we don't want anyone to drop out, because funnels inherently have people fall away. But yes, I get what you're saying.
The top end of the funnel in a lot of ways can be your online. Like you're reaching people, you're planting seeds, you're being loud and proud about the good news of Jesus. And if something like pops off and goes viral, like, go God, like, let's leverage everything we can for his glory, his renown. I think where we have to wrestle with our funnel, to steal some of the marketing language, is, are we willing to steward those contacts, those views, in a way that doesn't just benefit my church, but benefits the kingdom? If I'm kingdom minded, that funnel is not just going to end result of keeping you eyes glued to my channel. The end result is going to be that you give your life to Jesus, find a church near you where you can plug in, and then you start trying to repeat that process in other people's lives as you can. So if online can result in that, then yay, let's do it as much as we can.
It's funny. Yesterday, actually, I met with a board member of one of my clients, and he asked me a question that I get asked all the time, and one that I've learned very well in regards to how to best answer it, depending on the person that I'm talking to. But he asked, what metrics are you tracking to be able to figure out whether you're successful or not? And my answer is always the same. Whatever you want this ministry to report to you once a quarter. And he goes, it's like, here's the thing. I could get you 1 million new followers. Is it going to are you going to see more donors? Are you going to see more people praying for you? Are you going to see more signups? Are you going to be able to get more invites to speak? Are you going to be able to, but at the end of the day, as a church, you're asking yourself every year, like, what does success look like for my church? And if what you're doing and I'm hoping that it's not viewers. Okay. I'm hoping that it's, we've got, we're seeing growth in, we have new people, we have new community groups that are opening. We're actually looking at potentially being able to start a new church plant. Like we're spending this much money on missions. This is what normal churches talk about. And what happens is that they're ultimately looking at metrics that are, we call them in marketing, vanity metrics, right? These maybe point to how that they sometimes there's correlation and oftentimes causation, that these vanity metrics actually do help in regards to driving the business level goals, for lack of a better term. But like, sometimes what we're seeing is that we're focusing on the vanity metrics because they're easy. Listen, getting viewers is easy. Use clickbait titles and use like a bunch of other things, and you can get people to watch your stuff. But we're not in the viewer business. We are in the life change business. We are in the discipleship business. We are in the church growth business. We are in the kingdom growth business. And if we're doing anything that isn't focused on doing that, then we're just doing something for doing its sake rather than anything else.
So I've got some friends in ministry out there who are gifted with platform.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Gen Z, pastors who they were the first generation to truly grow up with social media. Social media didn't become a thing until I was college age for me. So there's a lot of them that really, learned how to have a big platform. And the last thing I want to do is make anyone feel like they are somehow wasting their influence if they are in the process of building a platform.
Amen.
And content creation and all that. Yeah, right. All that has its place. And I think God uses everything. I think specifically though, to not just to the content creators out there that are in the faith-based space, but to church leaders. And maybe you've even got someone on your staff that's gifted at this, or maybe you're good at preaching and you're also good at sermon excerpts and hashtags and all the things that kind of manipulate the algorithm. Good, great. Like I think we just have to like really be honest with ourselves. Like who is this really for?
Yeah.
And if we can truly like release that to the kingdom, and recognize that some of these people don't need to be in my church. Some of these people need to be a church in their own town. I think that's a posture that God's really, really going to bless. There in Acts, I think 19, it talks about how it went from just a couple of people meeting in the synagogue in Ephesus to the entire country of Asia Minor, hearing the gospel, not converting to the gospel, but that was one of the first viral movements.
Yeah.
And that's noteworthy. We celebrate that. And I don't think it's anything. I don't think it's any. We should also note that the 7 letters of the church of Revelation were all probably offshoots of that church of Ephesus throughout ancient Turkey. So again, it's not a bad thing to reach millions of people. We should, for God's glory. But let's just steward that in a way that benefits their spiritual formation more than benefits my analytics.
Yep. And here's the thing. Let's just not conflate ministry with church. That's an easy thing we can do. I mean, and even let's say this is a ministry within your church. And I tell people this all the time. You keep doing what you're doing, but everything that you do should have a focus when it comes to communications and marketing or digital outreach or whatever. There should be absolutely no doubt in the mind of the viewer or the listener what you want them to do next.
That's really good.
That's the difference maker.
Well, and I feel like I've got some homework now, just with me and Lindsay, who run our comms and social media and newsletters. Like I'm like, oh, I've even thought about some language tweaks that I need to do just based off some of the things you just said. So
Awesome.
I'm on the, that's really, really helpful reminders today. So I hope our listeners are getting as much out of it as I am.
Nice. Well, you're nice. Thank you very much. But I mean, this is marketing 101, right? We don't do things for doing things sake.
Right,
We
right.
don't leave things in, just like a sermon. Just think about this like a sermon. Like a good sermon always has an end point to it that
Right.
is about application, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with your digital outreach and with your digital discipleship or whatever. Just don't call it church, please. That's all I ask.
Well, I think we just figured everything out for online
We,
church. So
we
there we
did.
go.
We did. That's it. Hey, thank you, Nathan, so much for joining me. Thank you all for listening. Please don't unsubscribe, and we'll catch you guys in a couple of weeks.
I'll see you in some church chat room somewhere, I'm sure.
Bye.
This has been the Enduring Church Podcast with Nathan Castleberry and Michael Davis. We'll see you next time.